You are watching The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, your escape to reality.
Hey everyone.
Hi.
We're joined by George
Hello.
Robb and Richard Saunders. Richard, what time is it in Sydney right now?
It's 3 o'clock in the morning. No, it's
Oh.
all right. It's just after. It's just after 8 a.m. on Saturday.
Yes, it's tomorrow morning. So I'm sure most of the people on the stream have heard by now that James the Amazing Randi died a couple of days ago. We were just saying that we found out about it from, actually we were interviewing Richard Wiseman for the show this week, and he told us, because he had just heard. So we heard literally right when we started recording the show. So obviously we didn't have much of an opportunity to do any preparation for it, but we thought we would talk about it on the stream today. We're obviously going to talk about it on the show next week, and actually Banachek is joining us on the SGU next week to talk about Randi. But we do have, I did dig up an interview that we did with Randi in 2013. This is about 8 minutes, right, Jay? That never aired, never been on the show. No one's ever heard this before. I sort of kept it aside because, it's pretty obvious why when you listen to it, we start to talk about Randi, about Randi's mortality, and just mortality in general. And it struck me as something that would be interesting to keep aside and hold on to for this moment. So I think we're going to start by listening to that interview for 8 minutes, and then we're going to chat about Randi a little bit. Does that sound all right, guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please.
All right. I'm just going to pop that on. Here we go.
The following is part of an interview that the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe did with James Randi. This was recorded at the Amazing Meeting in 2013. Take a listen.
My good friend, the late Martin Gardner. Oh, my, how I miss the presence of Martin. He died at the age of 94, but he was a delightful soul, wonderful man, great, great thinker. And my library is just full of his books, all of which are gigantic accomplishments, I can tell you. But Martin Gardner, as rational as he was, I think about 3 or 4 years before he died, he told me on a phone conversation, he said, but you should know, Randi, that I'm a deist. Mm-hmm. And I sort of stopped on the phone. I said, I'd heard that, but I didn't know whether to believe it or not. Yeah. Now, a deist is a different thing from a religious person. A deist, he explained it. He tried to explain it to me. He said a deist is somebody who believes that there is some overpowering force that brought all this into existence and that has some sort of influence and is in the background. And I said, Martin, do you have any evidence for that at all? And he said, no, I freely admit it. You've got all the evidence on your side, Randy. I don't have any evidence whatsoever. And I said, well, why do you believe it then? And he answered me, now, this is charming, and it's typically Martin. He says, because frankly, it makes me feel better about myself. Yeah. That's all I need, guys. I don't need him to give me some big philosophical thing and quote all the famous philosophers of time. I don't need that. If it made Martin Gardner feel a little more secure, and he realized he was reaching the end of his life, and I accepted it with a certain amount of, a little twinge of, oh boy, I wish he hadn't said that kind of thing. Yeah. But nonetheless, it was my good friend Martin, and bless him. I have great memories of him.
I can accept that without a problem. I know a lot of people that are in that zone. Mm-hmm. My personal feeling is that when I realized that I don't believe in God, that I knew that I was going to die and it was going to be oblivion. Mm-hmm. It changed me. And I went through a process that I would not be the person I am if I didn't go through that realization.
You became a hedonist?
Well, no, not at all. No. And I will argue, I hate to say this, and some people might not agree with this statement at all, but I think I appreciate things on a level that someone that never faces their mortality gets to. Because I do think everything's precious, and every good person that I meet in my life is precious. And, I'm extending love to a lot of people, and it's the most important realization of my life, I think, is that I'm going to cease to exist.
When you close your eyes for the last time, whether you know it or not, or it comes suddenly, you don't know, of course, in advance, thank goodness. But when you close your eyes for the last time, if you do it quietly and in peace and in bed, as we might prefer to do it, as I do, I think you'll smile, knowing that you did the best you could while you were here, and that you're not going to be here any longer, but what you've done will outlast you. It will stay behind. Now, I'll have 11 books out, and they'll be around, not in the form of paper, because paper goes away eventually, but they'll be there someplace, I think, or at least the thoughts that I expressed.
Randy, a lot of people might say, well, that's easy for you to say, Randy, because look at you, you're world famous, and you have all this stuff, but I think everybody could get there. Everybody could feel that way.
Absolutely, yes.
You can, if you just changed the immediate friends and family around you, that's good enough.
Yeah. Or even if you just have 2 kids or something like that, and they're going to go on, and they're going to be successful in life and happy, and they're going to accomplish something. That's all you need.
Randy, are you afraid to die?
Oh, no, not at all. No. I'm going into an operation in a few days, as a matter of fact, and it's a critical operation, but I know I've got the best medical help in the world that are going to be looking after me, and I'll go under the anesthetic, and I'll just hope, I hope I come out of this,
Were you ever afraid to die in your life?
No. Oh, no.
Even when we were hanging over Niagara Falls?
Oh, no. I had a lot of rope on me, let me tell you. Steel cables and the whole thing. That wasn't going to fall anywhere. But, I have twice in my life, I have come very close to death. Yeah. And both times, I thought, this is the end. This is it. Damn, I was angry. I was totally pissed off. I was saying, I had so much to do, and I hated the fact that people would be sorrowing over me. Only 2, but but that people would be regretful of the fact that they didn't have me around anymore. Yeah, but I have no fear of death. I really have no fear of death.
Do you have any regrets?
Oh yes, I got regrets. Oh yeah.
Any you want to share? Or?
Hey.
Hey, come on.
I had 2 opportunities to hear Pavarotti sing in person.
Oh, boy.
And I couldn't take advantage of it. And I was in South Africa twice, and I begged and begged and begged to be enabled to touch the hand of Nelson Mandela. And I never got that either. There are a couple of other things that I've missed over the years, too. And, but these are small. Pavarotti did fine without me. Mm-hmm.
Those sound. I mean, if you get to the end of your life and those are your regrets, I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's an awesome regret.
Yeah, well, that's the worst regrets I've got, and if those are the worst, I'm doing okay.
Yeah. But you Randy, look back and you're comfortable that it was a life well spent.
Oh, I'm happy with what I got done. Yeah, because I've got over 1,000 people out there in the auditorium, and they seem to think that I'm okay. And,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's enough to get me going.
Randy, what's your biggest achievement?
Well, my book Flim Flam was my first book. I haven't turned out version 2 because it really hasn't been necessary. And that covers the whole spectrum pretty well of the paranormal. And what's the technical term that Penn Teller? Bullshit. It's all in there.
Randy, you were one of the primary inspirations for the Skeptics Guide podcast to come into existence.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. You were, before we started the podcast, if you remember, we had you speak for the NES a couple of times.
Oh, yeah.
You were one of the, you and Carl Sagan. It was you and Carl Sagan that did this to all of us.
Wow.
And, so my greatest achievement, other than my relationship with my wife and my child, of course, I'm talking about like the work that we do, is the SGU, is the podcast. And you started that for us. So I want to thank you.
The ripple effect from your influence is incalculable, I think.
I rippled off the place, did I?
Yeah. Well, it's like the butterfly effect, but with skepticism.
Yeah.
I see.
Very good. That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Well, I hope I'll be smiling. I suspect I will be when I close my eyes. That's not for a long time yet. When they ask me my age, I always say 84 going on 100 because I'm very optimistic.
So, Randy, if there is an afterlife, I want you to contact me.
Okay.
From the other side.
You got an address, an email address?
Let me finish with a metaphor that I think you'll particularly appreciate. So I think what we're saying is that you are one of the giants upon whose shoulders we all stand. And so we do appreciate the role that you played in the greater skeptical movement in the world today. I mean, really, again, I was sincere. I don't think we could really calculate all the number of people you touched and the people that they influenced, that really spreads very, very far. So no end to our appreciation for you.
Steve, that makes me all gushy.
Randy, has anyone called you a giant before?
No,
He said it was a metaphor.
Okay, metaphor.
I stand on the chair maybe, but...
Randy, congratulations on your marriage.
Well, thank you, sir.
And I wish you well with your surgery. I'm sure you're going to be fine.
Oh, yeah. Just go easy with that scalpel there.
Yeah.
No fancy work.
All right, you guys just got to unmute yourself.
All right, okay.
Let me see.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So that
Wow.
was 2013. So
That's great, Steve. That's great. Jake,
Wow.
guys, that was really great.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like 100
yesterday.
years ago. No, to me, it really does feel like a very long time ago because I could just hear the difference in our voices. I could tell it was an earlier version of all of us.
Yeah,
think-
and an
do
earlier
you-
version of Randy too. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think he really understood his influence and his the effect, the
think
ripple
so.
that he did?
I think
Yeah.
so.
I mean, can one legitimately?
I don't know how much time he spent thinking about it.
Yeah.
But again, I think Randy was interesting because he had a humility to him that combined with, he was a showman and he was always on and he loved entertaining.
Yeah.
Like we would be, if there was a momentary downtime, what was happening, he'd start doing some close-up magic, or he would just start joking around or telling stories or whatever. But he also, he was very self-deprecating at times, and he was, I think he had a good humility. When a couple of times, Randy expressed views that were not aligned with the evidence, at the time, and he got pushback, and he said, "All right, educate me," when he changed his mind, so he had enough humility to do that. He was not like arrogant in that he would persist in an incorrect view, despite being it pointed out to him,
Over the years of sort of getting opportunities to hang out with him multiple times, especially in sort of more casual environments, my favorite thing about Randy was to watch him when he wasn't on, because we'd be at a dinner or something, or we'd be at some kind of a meeting, and someone else has the floor and is talking, or the waitress is taking the orders, or whatever's going on. And I learned over time to watch Randy, and he would always be plotting. So he would be grabbing a spoon. He'd be grabbing a napkin. I saw him steal so many receipts from people that he would just sort of like, if the check would come and whatever the person paid already, and they were going to leave the receipt behind, he would sort of like, he would palm the receipt and he'd put it in his pocket. He might never use it, but like 2 years later, there might be some magic trick he's going to do, and he's going to absolutely blow the mind of the person.
Pull out your credit card. Does it end with
That's
a
what I mean.
221?
Yeah, exactly.
Ah!
You know, like, and I saw that happen a couple of times too, where he would have like something from the dinner that was, you know, a year before or whatever, or a couple of nights previous, and be like, you know, you last night you ate blah blah, because he's thinking. And I would just sit there and I would just like watch him and watch what he was doing and be like, oh, he's working. He grabbed a spoon. He grabbed a spoon. Something's coming. It's great.
It's absolutely true. Yeah, I saw that myself many times. And you couldn't just have a quiet dinner or a breakfast or something with James Randi. It was always a sort of a mini event, and he would always pull something out of his hat or whatever and do a trick, or he couldn't help himself.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you all remember the ripple of applause when Randi was seated at the table, no matter where he was after his little trick, and the gasps of amazement. The very first time I really spent any time with him was on a cruise, a harbour cruise here in Sydney after a convention in the year 2000. And I was at the table with Randi, and he did the out of this world trick, which I've since learned how to do it, but I'd never seen it before. This is the trick where your victim, for lack of a better word, will choose the back of a card and say, that's red, that's black, that's red, that's black, and spread it out. And when I saw that being done and I saw the result, I just couldn't believe it. I could not believe that was possible. It was completely and utterly bewildering to me. But that was what he did, you know, at dinner parties or anything.
I remember, you know, all the times we went to TAM, and in one way or another, Randi kind of came out on that Friday night and greeted everyone. It was kind of like, you know, we're in a big room with drinks and some more nerves.
The opening social.
Yeah. And then Randi would make his way in, and it's like a very human thing, because you know how we could feel the vibe. You know, I hate to use words like that because it's, but you know, you could feel when the mood in the room change. Yeah, we're essentially cattle, and we have communication ways to communicate that aren't you know, just by speaking. Mm-hmm. So the room's feeling would change, and you know, then Randi would start talking, and you could just, you know, I have a lot of video of those moments. I would always break out my phone or a camera and videotape those moments, and I looking at the crowd, and you know, everybody was just so happy.
Yeah.
Especially in those early years at TAM, there was so much love and happiness in the room, and Randi was the focal point. You know, he really, you know, he's been blamed by his critics for having a cult of people and everything. And I always was super offended by that, because I'm like, you know, this isn't, you know, this is not like, when you say a cult, you're talking about like someone who has done
mindlessly following.
Yeah.
There's a mindlessness to the word cult.
You hit the nail on the head, Evan, because we knew what we were doing there. We are, you know, the very small amount of delusion would be happening at a TAM conference, you know. But, you know, to know that all these people were just so like loved Randi and entertained by him and moved by him, you know, I've never had that experience before. I've been around a lot of famous people in my life, and I've never felt that kind of reaction by a crowd before.
And he would always say,
it wasn't. I'm sorry, George.
No, go ahead, Richard. Go ahead.
I'm just about to say, and you're absolutely right. It was, the outside perception may well be, oh, you just follow this man, whatever the case may be. But we never felt that when we were there. And there were times that I had words with Randi in private because I disagreed with something or whatever. Very rare, I must say, very rare. So the thought that I personally would treat him like some sort of guru, the fountain of ultimate knowledge and everything, was just ridiculous, especially after, you know, we became friends. And then many occasions we'd be joking and laughing together. So it's, but I can sort of get why some people might look at that and say, oh, you just followed this.
It's not true, though.
Guy.
I mean, he was a friend and a colleague. And I think that the vibe that Jay and Evan are talking about was affection. You know, yes, it was a little bit of fanboying. Absolutely. How could you not? You know, but it was more, I think, affection than anything else. The one time, Richard, where I was working with Randi on something where I had to like massively disagree with him was when we were doing, it was Perry, me, and Randi were at a cult conference.
Yes. Oh, wow. This is
Yeah.
That's
boy,
a long time ago.
2000 maybe around then.
This is 20 years ago. Yeah, about 2000. And Randy was the keynote speaker. So Randy gave a great, basically skeptical talk. And then he said, completely not reading the room, like completely misreading the room, basically made the point that there's no difference between a cult and a religion because the beliefs are equally ridiculous. And he was, making the mistake he was making was that it's not about the belief, it's about the behavior, And he was talking to a room full of people, most of whom had escaped from cults, right? Most of whom had experienced the overwhelming authoritarian, oppressive nature of a really malignant cult. And some of them, they escaped into like mainstream Christianity or some mainstream religion.
Yeah.
And so, again, it's not that what he was saying wasn't true. We just entirely missed the point. About what makes a cult different than a religion. And so I had to have a conversation with him about that afterwards. And explain to him, very gently. I didn't chastise him. I was just like, well, I think the reaction that you're getting, Randy, is this. Then I explained to him, it's not about that you're right, but it's not about the belief, blah, blah, blah. And so he completely accepted it, and like the next day, that was the Saturday night keynote speech. The next day, and he did all this spontaneously without talking to me about it. He, was doing some little follow-up event, at the conference. And he apologized, he corrected himself, and he donated his speaker fee to the conference, to the organization, to the as a way of making
all the
amends.
way.
Yeah,
So, I mean, he's someone that he wouldn't allow himself to be our guru.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
It's sort of
He would
capable.
He would correct us.
Yeah,
he would be the first one to correct that.
Right, or to just say like, don't take my word. I mean, he literally would say, "Don't take my word for it," kind of stuff.
No,
but not to say he didn't. He enjoyed the fact that people liked to see him and meet him and chat with him and getting some autograph. He really did sincerely enjoy all that. But that's a completely different thing than having a need for people to worship you, which he didn't have.
Or to be infallible. He was never infallible. Whatever.
Never.
I just love that in those introductions that Jay was talking about. He invariably every year would say, "Your job this weekend is to come up to me and say hi."
Yeah.
There's 1,200 people, 1,300 people at this thing, many of whom may be in all kinds of may feel awkward in all kinds of social situations. I mean, there was a certain percentage of our community, can be awkward socially, and that's and for him to say, it might be a little awkward, but come up to me and say hi. Like, I want you have to do that one thing for me.
Yeah.
I also love the fact they used to say, like, those TAM events were, sure, it was kind of like preaching to the choir, but I would always say, but how often do we get to be in the choir?
Yeah.
Especially if you think back to like, this is the Bush era, W era, post 9/11, super religiosity, super patriotism happening in the United States, where many of us at the time sort of thought like, critical thinking and science is kind of sort of really, and it might be breathing its last gasps. I know, right? Yeah. Go figure.
Walk in the
what
park.
I wouldn't trade.
Couldn't
right?
get worse than that, right?
But at the time, it was just like, wow, to have 1,200 people that agreed with you, about 90% of which issues you agreed with people, and then you could have really cool conversations about that final 10%. And the fact that Randy facilitated that was always something that I really loved. I remember, I think it was my first TAM, where I was doing a presentation or something, and I had gone to get a guitar or whatever it was, and then came back, and they had just opened up, and everyone was going to like lunch or something. So I was walking against the stream like a trout going upstream against 1,000 like-minded people, and I had never had that feeling before of like being able to look at every single person and saying, I bet we agree on about 90% of all the stuff that we agree with. And it was just such a wonderful environment to be able to feel comfortable in.
I never felt bad about it. And I learned things in the choir. You do learn things. And I thought to myself, well, okay, so all of us in the last decade, we might see each other at one, maybe two conventions a year. And I'm thinking, so for 4 or 5 days a year, I think I'm allowed to be with like-minded people. The rest of the time, you know.
Absolutely.
Right. You
Dare
fight
we
the
say
tide.
some friends?
You're
Yes.
fighting the tide.
Yeah.
You know, Steve's story about the day, that conference with Evan and Perry, and I've heard it many times, and I've thought about it many times. Just hearing you tell people that. And I think my takeaway from that is, when comparing Randy to a lot of other famous people that I've met and that I know throughout the years, James Randi was such a high quality person. By I think part of it is we're born that way. I think a lot of it is nature, and I do also think that nurture is a key player, especially as an adult. You can control yourself. You can change yourself. You can make yourself be a better person. I'll say that.
Mm-hmm.
But my God, Randy like blew away other famous people. I mean, you could be at TAM and you meet someone and you're like, oh my God, the ego on that guy.
Yeah.
It's like a trumpet in my face. And you talk to Randy and he's like,
Jay, I'm right here. What are you doing? Come on,
Yeah.
I'm sitting right here, man.
I know, it really got to me.
Let me
that
tell you
night,
another
George.
story from that conference, because this is another sort of iconic Randy story. So we're sitting at dinner, and some guy walks over, and he had a Dianetics book in his hand, and he wants to talk to us about the value that this book is going to change your life, right? So I'm gearing up to like debunk the Scientology bullshit, and Randy looks at the book and says, I met L. Ron Hubbard twice. Both times he was drunk, and then he walked away. End of conversation. I know, just done and done. But it's also like,
Wow.
How many times has that happened to him? There's like hundreds.
Randy could be so incredibly pithy. Like, I would struggle to like lecture for a half an hour about something, and Randy would go, yeah, bird shit and gravel is natural too. You won't see me eating it. Done. But
That's right.
That's right.
But it's also like, you realize, like, he was so plugged in. That's the other thing. Like, for us, what part of what made Randy special in our community. It's like, yeah, of course he met L. Ron Hubbard twice.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
not only he's been around forever, but he had so many experiences. Again, like, the stories were endless. And I always felt, as many times as we've been with Randy at dinner or whatever, and sitting down and talking with him, he always had a new story to tell us. Like, he wasn't telling us the same three things over and over again.
Yeah.
And it almost seemed like somehow he remembered that he hadn't told us that story before, and it was
Yeah.
now time to tell us a new
It's
story
like
that we
there
had. Somehow he managed.
Really
that.
created the
you look
impression that there
back-
was a bottomless pit of awesome stories, and
Without
we
a
were just
doubt.
scratching the surface.
But it wasn't just stories of him rubbing shoulders with other famous people. I mean, because the guy, he had so many stories, so many like real stories with famous people, like him meeting Johnny Carson, becoming friends,
all the Carson
all the
stories.
Carson
Oh my
stories.
gosh.
But Randy told us
Awesome.
a story about one day when he went to the train, and it was one of my favorite Randy stories.
Which
of
we
all
can't
time, right?
tell.
He
Which
would just,
we can't tell. Wait.
but he would just tell.
I guess
a
we
fun
could. Go
thing
ahead.
that happened to him. It wasn't him
Oh,
bragging.
what's the
It
train
was-
story? What's the train story? Come on.
It was just this little thing. He was like telling us.
Jay,
No,
you got it.
You want me to do it?
He walks up to a train platform, and there's a guy standing like right up near where the train pulls in. He's like 10 feet back, and all of a sudden he goes, so I hear this guy, and the guy just started going fuck like that, and we were like,
Shit.
what did you just say? Like, oh my God, Randy, what was that? And he's like, yeah, it was such a weird thing. And the guy just, he would just go fuck like, and we were like so shocked that he told us this story, and the way that he delivered it was so
Oh my gosh.
humorous. And that
He
has
knew how to
been
tell a
an
story.
SGU inside joke for 20 years.
Basically.
That's great.
Out of the blue, one of us will just yell out a stream of F's like Randy, and we all laugh because we just
We all know
remember
what that
night.
means. We know exactly what
Yeah.
that is.
How do you guys? I'm wondering
go
how
ahead.
you guys explain Randy to people that don't know him. When you have to, like, if you have a friend or a relative or something, I always say, my go-to was like, okay, remember the Happy Days episode where Fonzie's in the milk can and that magician
Right.
drinks the
Yeah,
vodka?
right.
That's
Right.
Randy. And it'd be like,
Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
that guy. Like,
Yeah.
those are my contemporaries. That was always my go-to, like, for people that didn't know who he was. What would you guys use? Or a similar thing or what?
Well, I would normally use something like spoon bending and Geller, but the trouble with that is it doesn't work on many generations now, because who's Uri Geller? What is spoon bending?
Yay.
So then, exactly.
At
right,
least, yeah,
exactly.
right.
The $1 million challenge was a good go-to for a while, but of course,
That was
Yeah,
a good
for a while.
go-to. The
But-
Johnny Carson
Johnny
connection
Carson.
was
Johnny Carson
very
connection.
much. Yeah.
yeah.
I would
good
tell people
go-to-
the Popoff story
Peter
because a lot of
Popoff,
people
yeah.
didn't know it. And if I'm introducing someone to Randy, I would just say, well, let me tell you one thing, one operation that Randy did. And I would tell them the whole story about, finding the frequency. Popoff is being told all the information about the guest by his wife, who the radio, and he had the radio in his ear, and that, I tell them the whole story, and very, very, very unanimously, people would be like, wow, that guy figured all that out and pulled that off. Like it's just a really incredible sting operation that they pulled on Popoff.
Yeah.
And that left an impression.
Apparently, God speaks at 93 kilohertz.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll know that. Yep.
Yep.
So the thing that's interesting is that, for us, Randy has all of these stories about his skeptical career, but he had, even though they crisscross, he also had a completely separate magician career. And there are magicians who know him within their industry as Randy, as a mentor, as a magician, even the skepticism aside, just as a stage magician.
Well, the Alice Cooper thing too. That I use for my musician friends. I'd be like, when Alice would get his head cut off and the dentist would come out and do that, that was James Randi.
Yeah.
He'd be like, you know that guy? I'm like, yeah, I know that guy.
Well, but all of these streams were happening relatively at the same time. He had hundreds of TV appearances.
Yes.
He wrote 10
Shows,
books.
multiple shows.
He was a carny. He started off as a carnival entertainer, as a conjurer at a carnival when he was a teenager.
What's up with his book, by the way? Like, I know he was working on this
The
massive
Magician in the
book.
Magician in the Laboratory.
I don't know.
Is
He
someone
couldn't.
gonna
The
finish
last
that,
I
or-
heard, from Randy is he couldn't find a publisher, which is amazing. But
There
he could
must
not
be
find
lots
a
of
publisher.
manuscript ready to go somewhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
Randy and I
Oh
discussed
my
that book
gosh,
years
yeah.
ago. I toured with Randy here in Australia at the end of 2014. We went from Sydney to Adelaide to Perth to Brisbane to Melbourne, all over the place. And that was, talk about an experience. I was on stage to do the fireside chat with James Randi in front of the thousands of people in these cities for some of the tour. Just incredible. But talking about funny Randy stories, we were walking together in the city of Perth in Western Australia a day or two, or the day of the show, maybe getting some lunch or something. And this woman from the other side of the street sees James Randi, and she's a little bit overcome, and she rushes across the street in such a hurry, her shoe flew off and hit me right in the crotch.
Memorable.
And
Very
you still,
memorable.
Yeah, you still remember that.
And that was the best sex of your life.
And then she didn't miss a beat. She just picked up a shoe and said, "Randy, I'm so happy to meet you." And I'm so James Randi was a danger to my health in Perth, I can tell you. But what a wonderful thing it was to spend time with the man and just be part of his stage presence at that moment. It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I hope they find a publisher. My gosh, come on.
Yeah, I'd like to hear more about
Yes.
that. I wonder who. I'm sure Davey,
Even
of course,
self-publish or
has
something.
control over that.
Online or something.
Prometheus, anyone?
So
Yeah.
I've been in contact with Davey, Randy's partner. He wanted to be here tonight, but he just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll be able to talk to him at some point. There's so many things that I would love to talk to Davey about. And if you don't know, Davey was a integral part of one of Randy's biggest operations that he ever ran, which essentially Randy created a fake spiritual guru, and Davey played the part.
Yeah.
And he took over a nation, right?
Australia.
In Australia.
Absolutely. It was, I remember it. Yeah, it was huge. And luckily for us, there's a long way to Australia. Sometimes the internet is a bit hit and miss. Luckily for us, the 60 Minutes program here in Australia, where the whole story came together, in the last couple of months, they've put it up on their YouTube channel in high quality.
Oh,
So
good.
if you go and look for James Randi Carlos hoax 60 minutes in YouTube, you can see the story, and
Great.
it was just sublime.
Richard, do you remember like seeing Carlos before you realized that Carlos was?
Oh, yeah.
Was, and what did you think at the time? Were you of a skeptical mind at the time, or were you more credulous? Or
No, I was of a skeptical mind at the time. I didn't think he was a genuine thing, but we sort of took it as, oh, here's the next act from America coming out
Okay.
to try to pull something. I wasn't involved in skepticism at the time,
right?
and but it was very big news here because they had him throw a glass of water on a TV
Right.
host.
Right.
And in those days, there weren't too many choices when watching TV. So a lot of people saw this.
Yeah.
And then the big reveal. If you watch
Oh.
the video, you'll see the big reveal. Yeah.
And that, that was funny because it was an unpredictable outcome. Randy didn't know what was going to happen. I remember one stunt that they pulled with Carlos where Carlos would claim, now Carlos is the character, right? So Carlos, the psychic and the faith healer and all the things that they pretended that he was, he said to people, I am able to stop my heart. I can stop my blood pressure. And, they had medical doctors there checking his blood pressure and his pulse. And lo and behold, he stopped his blood pressure. And the trick that Randy came up with was that he took a very hard ball,
A tennis ball.
like a tennis ball,
Under the arm,
and
you just
and Davey
you
put it in his
squeeze
arm,
it.
just pushed on the main artery in his arm, and stopped the pulse in his hand. And first off, it's ingenious because Randy concocts this way to make it seem like he could stop his heart.
Simple,
Right.
brilliant. Yeah.
But at the same time, it also shows you like it's just skepticism 101. Like, so you have the guy do it once. You don't listen to his heart with stethoscopes. There's so many ways that they could have verified that falsehood. And the other cool thing is that Randy, he was allowing them to do what they wanted. Like I think part of Randy wanted them to figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't blocking them from doing a real investigation. They just believed it.
Well, when you had the Project Alpha guys, now for those that don't know, Project Alpha was two magicians that were passed off as having genuine psychic powers, and they were tested by scientists, and they figured out one of them was Banachek.
Banachek.
Yeah.
One of them,
Sure.
they would just figure out ways to rig the test and pass the tests.
Yeah.
However, Randy said to them, if anyone asks you, are you faking? Say yes.
Yeah.
Like if anyone, are you cheating? If they ever ask you that, like
Don't
don't
lie.
lie. Like manipulate, do whatever you need to do to make the tests happen, but don't outright lie. If someone asks you, are you faking? Are you cheating? Say yes, and no one ever asks.
Isn't that remarkable?
But
It's
so
amazing.
On that line though, so we were doing I think a seminar with Randy on magic and skepticism, and he showed the audience how to do a particular card trick, right? And it was with a special deck, right? It was a trick deck, and somebody asked him from the audience, well, what if an audience member asks to see the deck of cards? What do you do? And he said, they won't ask. If they ask, you've already failed. You have failed the trick, right? The whole part of being a magician is not the trick. Anybody could buy a trick deck of cards and learn how to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
The
Selling
skill is in that you do it so that they won't ask. That's the skill of being.
That's
the
the showmanship.
It's the showmanship
That's
and the misdirection, the manipulation. It's all that. It's the psychological end of it.
Oh,
The trick
gosh,
is
yeah.
not that big of a deal. It's the fact that they are manipulating your experience and your expectations, and they know that you won't ask. They know that you won't ask.
Yeah. So I wrote down a few important notes or timeline dates from Randy's life that I thought were interesting. And like I said, so when he was 17, he dropped out of high school and he joined a circus and as the conjurer, basically, a sideshow magician. After that, soon after that, he started to practice mentalism in nightclubs in Canada, in Toronto. And the thing that started his scientific skepticism was I guess he became aware that a pastor was lying to his parishioners and said that he could read minds. And he went in and he showed everybody in the church. He did it. He did the pastor's trick flawlessly. And the pastor's wife called the police. Randy sat in the clink for 4 hours. And that was the impetus to become a scientific skeptic, science-based skeptic, which I just find that fascinating. You can literally go back and say, yep, that's the thing that did it.
He saw the emotions of those people being played with. That's much like Houdini. Houdini was himself doing the tricks, and he realized, like, oh my gosh, I'm wielding a power which is really manipulating people, and I can't do that just in all good consciousness. And Randy had the same experience, but saw it happening and was like, you can't do that. You shouldn't be allowed to do that. And that's his whole ethos right there.
Yeah, well, Randy always took offense to magicians perverting and twisting the noble art of conjuring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so let's see here. So he also he picked his stage name, The Amazing Randy, in late 40s, early 50s. And he did several world tours with that stage name during the 50s as a magician. So think about that. How many years ago was that? How, that was 50, 60, 70
years ago.
70 years ago. Randy was touring the world as a magician.
Wow.
In the 70s, Randy called out Geller for the first time. He called him a fraud, Uri Geller, the spoon bender. And that got him some good and bad notoriety. And that was the impetus for his relationship with Johnny Carson. So he became friends with Johnny Carson, and
who was also a magician.
Yep. And
has Geller said anything? Has anybody noticed?
I haven't heard. I hope he keeps a low profile. I wonder
if he would say something.
You know what's funny, Richard? I was thinking about Geller yesterday.
Yeah.
And I was really hoping that he was going to come out and show some respect for Randy.
Yeah.
Because let me put it to you like this. Geller knows he's a fake.
Yeah.
100%. He knows it. I don't think the guy drinks his own Kool-Aid. He is actually a magician.
Yeah, you can't accidentally bend the spoon the way he does it. You have to learn the process.
Yeah. Yeah, he preps. He preps physical items to do his tricks,
Of course. Yeah.
And I have been secretly hoping for a very long time that Geller, as much as he didn't want Randy to expose him, you know what? Randy and Carson actually created Geller. Because if Carson didn't make his friendship with Randy, and the two of them didn't concoct this idea to just squash out this stupid minor, guy that's pretending to be psychic and can move things with his mind, Geller would never have been picked up by TV. So because he got on Johnny Carson, they created Uri Geller by accident. And
it's like the Joker and Batman.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yes, it is the classic. It's the classic, yeah.
I've been hoping for a very long time that Geller was going to someday just be like, Randy was the shit. You know what I mean? Because he's a magician. He knows. I just, maybe I ask for too much. This is what I think about at night when I'm in bed.
I can't see it happening. I mean, we could all be surprised. I really can't see it happening, but it's the classic. It's the Moriarty and the Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
it's the Doctor and the Master. It's James Randi and Uri Geller.
So let me finish up here. So, Johnny Carson and Randy had a real love and respect for each other. They Randy was on many, many times. The two of them, like as an example, Johnny Carson, Randy was the only person that Johnny would talk to before a show. Out of all the celebrities throughout the years, Johnny loved and appreciated Randy so much that he sought him out. He wanted to be in his presence, which I thought was really cool. And here's a big one. So in 1976, Randy reached out to Ray Hyman, and then that's where Martin Gardner came into Randy's life, and the three of them created the Committee for Scientific Investigation of Claims of the Paranormal Psychop. That's in 1976. Those three people getting together and making that organization is, it's part of my life's history at this point, because my life wouldn't be what it is unless those three people converged on each other and created that organization.
But we have to say that just Paul Kurtz they created the idea, but they didn't really know how to make it into an organization.
Yeah, you're right.
Then they
Steve.
hooked up with Paul Kurtz, and he was the one who was a publisher and an academic and a philosopher and knew how to get it done, and he made it into Psychop.
Yeah.
So you have to throw Paul Kurtz in there as well. But it was Hyman Gardner and Randi getting together were sort of the impetus for it. And then early on, Carl Sagan was a supporter, but he often, because he's famous, he gets credited with founding it. But it wasn't Sagan. He was just an early supporter.
And I heard,
sorry to jump in here, but I just went to Uri Geller's Twitter feed.
Oh, yeah, I heard he said something.
what do you
horrible.
say?
Well, he's posted, I don't know what this video is. It looks like it's a video of Randi confronting him or Uri confronting Randi. I haven't watched it, but within the tweet, Uri says, "How sad that Randi died with hatred in his soul."
Oh God.
Oh, what a dick.
So much for that.
Well, there,
So that answers that question.
Didn't know him at
There
all.
is, yeah.
Basically,
Yeah,
basically
that
did not
answers
know
that
him one
question.
bit.
All right,
I
so
don't-
I'll
yeah.
formally say right now, Uri Geller, go fuck yourself, you piece of shit. Sorry, I can't.
Jay,
sorry
don't
for
have hate in
swearing.
your soul.
Yeah,
but
all
I
that
have,
hate.
that really pisses me off. Like, that guy. Whatever. The world is full of
it reveals one's true character when
Yeah,
when
totally.
dealing with someone who cannot defend themselves on any level anymore and literally has died in his sleep at 92.
I think he's the dictionary definition of a has-been.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Desperately trying to still
Barely
get
was.
attention and admiration.
But what I like to say, and even just think to myself, when people say things like that, is that says everything about them, right, and nothing
Yeah.
about the target.
Exactly.
No, it says nothing about Randy. It says everything about Uri Geller.
Everything.
Everything you
Yep.
need to know.
Yep.
Yeah, and but Randy, look at, you could define yourself partly by who you are in opposition to, and it would have been really cool if he said Randy was a worthy adversary. Anything he could have spun it into a
Respected
positive.
magician, right? Entertainer, something.
Yeah.
Although we blah, at least we blah. Yeah, something like
Yeah,
that.
exactly.
Yeah.
George.
That's the classy thing. But
That was
won't
the
happen,
that
so.
was the opportunity for magnanimity, my friend, and instead
Yep.
you chose to be a small piece of shit.
Yeah.
So good luck.
We had.
Do you-
I posted a picture of Randy. I said, I don't remember exactly what I wrote on Facebook, but I put a message out there. I put it up on the SGU's Facebook. We got all these responses, wonderful, wonderful responses. And going back to like what you said earlier, George, about Randy saying, come see me, everybody has a picture of them.
Everybody has a picture, yeah.
And this love fest and grief fest about Randy, which is exactly what he deserves. And this one person comes on and like puts Randy down at the worst time. It's like hours after Randy died. This negative statement comes out about she was upset because Randy was against pseudoscience. In essence, that
he
was
criticized homeopathy. How dare he?
Yeah, and I literally, I got so turned off, and I said to the person something like, just take your comments and go somewhere else. I cannot deal with this bullshit right now. On any other day, I could spin that and talk to the person and try to defuse and do all the hoop jumping that I do on Facebook to not tell people to go screw themselves. But like people that do that, like you come to a place where hundreds of people are grieving.
Right.
For a very, very well-respected man, and you're going to be like, well, actually, like, just go away.
It's like Steve said, reveals more about the person than anything else. So.
Yeah, it definitely does.
It's so interesting with our social media, and this happened when Neil Peart, the drummer from Rush, died. That I watched it sort of happen in real time. I was literally just like looking at some page and something, and someone had said, "Oh, Neil's gone," and I was like, "No, that's a fake thing." I went back, and in 20 minutes, I kind of watched this bloom of responses, and the same thing. Jay texted me here, and I went on. I posted something really quick, and to see this blossom of response, and everyone posting their own photos, and everyone pretty universally sort of saying positive and wonderful things and being shocked by the loss. It's quite an interesting thing that we get to experience now, being alive today, to sort of see these things happen in real time.
Yeah.
It's
Right,
really
because
curious.
it would be limited to friends and family and your surrounding community. I mean, you're right, George. It was a love blossom, and they can't take that away from Randy. I mean, give me a break. Amidst hundreds of people putting loving pictures of him up and saying all these wonderful things, you get this one negative fool that comes on for some reason and thinks that you know, I don't know what shot of dopamine they're getting by posting something. You know, there are people that, like legitimately that I really wish the worst for in this world because I think they're evil people. And I refuse to say something negative about them in a moment of weakness or when they die or whatever. Just forget it. Like, let it go, you know? So I have been sad since Randy died. You know, I just have so much to process, and, you know, I just feel old and tired, you know, losing Randy. It really just slows me down and hurts me in a lot of ways. But I got to also tell you that, like, this is a life to celebrate.
Mm-hmm.
The five of us are sitting here right now, and two of you, you know, George and Richard, I would not know you at all if it wasn't for Randy.
Yeah, that's safe
True,
to say.
100%.
Absolutely.
Met you guys at TAM. We became friends at TAM. We started to love each other at TAM. We performed together at TAM.
Not in the biblical sense, but yes.
Yeah. You know, but we forged our swords together at TAM with each other, and that
I'm assuming.
Yeah. Well, you know, we can't get
You were
into
asleep,
details
Steve.
here.
So
There's no photographic or audio evidence.
Steve goes to bed at 9, so that's it. It's like,
I know, damn that early bedtime.
You're spot on, Jay. Though you're spot on, and it's you know what it's like. Look, we've got what each. I mean, we're similar in age, so what we got 40 years each, 45 years each to try to match his legacy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, let's
I hope.
let's do that. Let's do that.
That's a great point, George, because when James Randi came to Australia in the year 1980 and this is on YouTube too, it's called James Randi in Australia. It's a brilliant documentary. He was 52, okay? He was 52 just before the Australian Skeptics started. Now, I'm almost 55, which means look at all the years I've got ahead to do whatever the hell I can with my knowledge and my specialist insights and things like that. And we're just saying...
The Saunders meeting.
Yeah. This is the first picture of Randy and myself in the year 2000.
Wow. Oh, God, that is awesome.
Oh, that's
sweet so great that
there.
you have that.
Oh, my God. Yeah. Richard, you have like a hip sack. What are you doing? Fanny pack. What are you doing?
That was my
cool.
My camera.
Was that your camera? Oh, okay, good. Yeah, never mind.
It's it's a kangaroo thing down there. It's all very different for them.
That's a great picture to have. I don't have my first picture of Randy with Randy. I don't know where it is.
I have a great picture of you. I have a great picture of you and Randy, Jay. I'll send it to you.
Oh, cool.
Great one.
Yeah, and he said, "Why isn't everybody bends down to take their photograph with me?"
You're wearing a colander. You're wearing a colander on your head.
I have that. I have.
Oh, you do have that? Yeah. Oh, great.
Yeah, that was. I remember. Oh, yeah, I love that in your house.
George. So after the first TAM, when I performed, I got this picture. I was on a panel and I got to sit next to Randy, which was so great. I have a great picture. I call it my skeptical Last Supper. It's Randy and Adam Savage and Banachek and me and Richard. I think you were in that panel as well. And it's like a long table, and it was great. But this is excerpted from that, and so I made this big raster poster, and I had that on my wall for a number. Wow. I was just so excited when I got home. I was just like, I got pictures next to Randy. Oh my God! I gotta like let people on the street know this, you know. So yeah, I had that up for a number of years.
Yeah. Should we take questions?
Well, I just want to make one more statement because I was going somewhere with my 20-minute rant here. I'm sorry. I've been thinking about this so much. But, right. I feel old. I'm tired. I am old and tired. But I look at what Randy did from when he was my age to the end of his life. And there is, hoping that I live into my late 80s. Both of my parents, my mom is still alive. She's in her 80s. My dad made it to his late 80s. It's very likely I'm going to make it to my late 80s. I've got a good chunk of time left. And if I live my life, just if I did 1/10 of what Randy did after he turned 50, I would have an amazing life. Mm-hmm. And it's a good thing to keep in mind when you feel down and out, especially in this time of COVID when we're locked at home. This shit's going to pass, and we're going to be able to go on and do more things and become more things. And
Jay Bilbo was 55 when he went on his adventure.
See
that? Wow, 55.
Just getting started.
The Marx Brothers were 40 when they did their first movie. Ish.
Wow.
Lucille Ball was 41 when she had her first kid. 41, 42.
We're all just starting, guys.
Ago.
We're all just starting.
Yeah. I mean, I look forward to. We have a lot of projects in the fire with George. We have one in particular that we're really working on.
You burned it. Was that bad?
And
No, it's toasty.
Richard,
It's
I,
warm.
I
It's
would
the
love to
perfect
have a
temperature.
project with you. I would love to work on a special project with you. You and I should talk.
Yeah, we will.
We had so much fun at Dragon Con last year. Remember, it was such a treat to have you. We got to hang out the whole time.
It's
It was
it's always
really
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
That was big. And could you imagine that we'd think we had a wonderful time. It was busy and crazy Dragon Con, and this year
nothing. Yeah.
Nothing.
Yeah.
Wow.
So as people are gearing up to ask questions about Randy and whatever, I got this package from a listener named Lee Marsh. This is everything to do with the meatball hubbub that has been presented to, I'm going to be, I don't know if you know this, Richard, but I have a meatball recipe that I shared with the world, and a lot of people did it. And Lee sent me this as a thank you because I sent him apparently a fantastic meatball recipe. So I'm opening this.
Well,
box.
you and I were eating meatballs about this time last year in Melbourne, if you remember.
Yes, we did. Yes, we were. And they were good. That restaurant was excellent. So here's the
Fantastic.
shirt that he made.
Nice. Nice.
Raging Meatballs.
The Raging
That's
Meatballs.
Funny.
I really like it.
I like their
really
early
like
albums
it.
better than the later albums.
And I will say this, it is a high quality blank. Usually when people send you shirts, they get the $2 shirt. This is a $7 shirt. Thank you, Lee. I know the difference because I buy t-shirts. And then, what is this? There's some other doohickey in here.
Is there sauce in there or something?
This might be something I can't show it to public.
Yeah. Yeah. Good to screen these things before.
Oh, this is dehydrated meatball. Oh, cool.
What's a dehydrated meatball look like?
Oh, it's Cthulhu.
Oh, there we go.
Neat.
Ooh.
Oh,
Very
this is
nice.
awesome.
Wow.
This is totally an office item. I'm going to put that over here.
Yeah, Cthulhu.
Lee, thank you so much. Thank you. This is really wonderful. And I am a huge t-shirt lover. And I will wear this on AQ6 without a doubt. So let's take our first question.
Okay. Here's a question. What was your favorite magic trick you saw Randy perform?
So let me tell you,
Oh,
this
boy.
is not necessarily my favorite one, but this is one blew me away. It's so simple. We were waiting to start an interview, and Randy, there were dice on the table because we're nerds and we have dice.
That's right.
Yeah, Randy picks up a six-sided die, what we would call a D6, what everyone else calls a die, right? And he turns it around. I have one. Right
Can you
here.
do the? Can you do the?
Because
Can
again,
you do it?
because we're nerds. So
I can't do it.
He does the trick where like he shows you one side. It's like, look, see,
Yeah.
it's six on. Well, it's like six on this side.
And one on
So
the
I
other.
give it to
It's
him,
a-
six on this
oh,
side, one on this side. And then he does it so that he's like, see, it's then the numbers change. I'm kind of where the camera is. Then it's 5 and 2, but no, it's 6 and 1.
Yes.
And it was seamless. Like I couldn't figure out how we did it. Of course, it's some sort of sleight of hand trick. But he told us how we did it, and it's always like it's so simple. Like how could it be that simple?
Yeah.
But he did it so well, and I've been practicing it for like 6 or 7 years. I still don't have
Still
it
can't. That's-
as good as well as he did it.
Even when you know how he's doing it, he technically does it so well
Yeah.
that
Yes.
it's still impressive. It's still like you can't see the finger position change at all.
I watch videos of that trick, of him doing that trick, and I've watched him 100 times. And yeah, you cannot. It's so
seamless,
subtle.
yeah.
It's so subtle.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh!
I
it's
got to
brilliant.
go to the Galapagos with him. I was very, very lucky that I was asked to go on this JREF trip. And the trick where a person sits in a chair and then the magician stands over them and they make balls of paper towels or tissues
Yes.
disappear by basically throwing it over the person's head.
Yeah.
Close
So
up, yeah.
everyone else that's
to be
watching
close.
is in on the joke.
Yeah.
And you do it just so well and so
Right.
fast. And he was doing it to the staff on the ship. So he wasn't doing it to anyone else. And the cool thing was like the staff had no idea who this little old man was. At the time he was he was 81 or 82, which was amazing that he had such energy back then. Like he'd be the first one off the boat because we had to take, the ship would get close to the islands and then you had to take these rubber inflatable boats onto the beach. And so you were doing like beach landings. And Randy was the first one jumping off the boats and climbing up the mountains and doing all that stuff. It was awesome to watch, inspiring. But one night he started doing these tricks, and more of the staff started coming out of like the kitchen, and they're all like dressed in white in their sort of staff uniforms, and they're watching this like random little old man blow the mind of the person who's in the chair. It was this woman. I think she was like a waitress or something, and she was just sort of watching it. And it was so, and he just kept selling, and like the things got larger and larger, so that he's making these massive like towels disappear behind her head, and he's pretending like it was so great. It was so all just presentation.
Yeah, it's all presentation. Absolutely.
I said before, my favorite trick was Out of This World, because it's the first trick I saw him perform close up. And it's like your first car or whatever it is, when you see a trick that sincerely and utterly confounds you. And I thought, that can't happen. What Randy just did is not actually possible. And it was an amazing moment. It really was.
I can't pick one. I mean, I've seen Randy do so many tricks. I think I always was the most entertained with what you guys were saying about the close-up magic with other people. Like, because I watched him, he'd come to the SGU dinner. I'd see him pull tricks on people 100 times in one time. You just see him do it nonstop wherever at dinner. Spoons would disappear and everything. Yeah, I guess that's it. I guess seeing him do the Uri Geller spoon bending trick like it was nobody's business, that was always fun because it has history and a lot of emotion behind it. So that's got to be it for me.
Yeah.
Next question.
Along those lines, is there a lot of technology used in modern big magic tricks, as far as you know?
What do you?
Yes and no.
What you mean by big magic tricks? You mean like making the
I
Statue
guess
of
the
Liberty
David
disappear kind of stuff?
David Copperfield kind of stuff, and maybe David Blaine and all those kind of.
David Blaine,
more and more.
He's an endurance artist more than
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Straight
because
up
it depends on the trick.
Wait, pick a card. Wait, pick a card.
I know.
Wait, no, wait.
That's
Pick
good,
a
George.
card.
David
Pick a card.
Blaine was
I would
tricking
say like
some of the neurosurgeons at Yale, and I had to explain to them why what he was doing was tricks,
Right.
and not neurological.
Right.
Yeah, but that son of a bitch, he did a special, and he did this thing where he made someone's name appear in ashes on his arm, and it was a person, it's a standard trick or whatever. And then he approached the woman that he was doing it to, and he was like saying, "She's okay. She's telling me she's okay." He like crossed over
that line.
into this psychic kind of horse shit. I was like, "That's it. I'm done. Fuck you. I'm done."
Yeah, and Randy had a problem with him with that as well. He's talked about that before,
Okay.
in which he had conversations with David Blaine, because
Really?
David Blaine would consult him about these, endurance performances that Blaine would do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they did not meet eye to eye on
Inexcusable.
Yeah.
right on the limits of
Absolutely
performance.
unnecessary.
Yeah. It's a shame.
Randy never forgot that he was just a magician. He wasn't doing
But just
anything
a
other
good
than-
rule of thumb, though, with magic tricks, and Randy made this point many times, it's always an order of magnitude simpler than you think it is.
Yeah.
And just whatever you think is using some kind of fancy technology
Twins.
or whatever.
Which
Yeah,
makes
it's
sense.
Probably not. It's probably just really simple, and you're just going to feel dumb when you learn what's
That makes
going on.
total sense.
It ties in very well. It's a very good lesson when it comes back to that person we were discussing before, Uri Geller. Now, people completely and utterly overthought the spoon bending, and Geller used that to his advantage to have a straw man out there. And he said, "Well, people say I've got laser beams in my belt. That's just ridiculous." Putting the impression out there that
if you
skeptics
don't
are so
have laser
crazy.
beams in your belt, it must be real.
Yeah.
Was
That's
it,
part
I
of
don't
the
know if this was
misdirection.
I don't know if this was Randy, but someone told this story of some magician seeing a trick on stage, and it was like a materialization thing. The person is in this place, and then he's like at another place instantly, and the guy couldn't figure it out, and he showed it to Randy, and Randy literally just went, "Twins." And like he just instantly knew. He was like, "No, it's twins. It's the only way I could do it. It's twins." And he's like, "Oh yeah, it's twins. Okay, great." Love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, the answer is definitely yes. They use technology, and they use the age-old sleight of hand and all the dexterity-based stuff.
Yeah.
as well.
There are some great like iPad magicians and stuff now that incorporate phones and incorporate video screens, and it's really impressive.
Oh,
but
yeah,
you
but
still get
there's
down to that
nothing wrong
basic.
with it.
Oh no, it's great.
There's
It's
nothing
but
wrong.
it's still basic. It's still
Yeah.
it's just using a different tool to do that same sleight of hand stuff.
Yeah.
I asked Randy once if there was ever a trick he didn't know how they pulled it off, how they did it. And he stopped and he thought, he's like, I really can't think of an incident like that.
Well, he
No.
told me
said,
one though, Evan.
"Hmm,
That at least at first he couldn't figure it out, and that was the amazing Kreskin, who I don't know if any of you guys have seen him. I saw him live on stage once, and Kreskin was a mentalist who definitely flirted with the line of "I'm really, I'm really
Magic,
psychic,"
yeah.
and he did this thing where an audience member would hide an envelope under a seat in an auditorium, right, in the audience, and then while Kreskin wasn't there, and then they would blindfold Kreskin, and Kreskin would be holding on to a handkerchief that the person who hid the envelope was holding on to, and Kreskin would basically find the envelope with just by getting vibrations from the person he was connected to only with a handkerchief. And Randy said, I couldn't figure out what the trick was, how he did it, but he eventually came to the conclusion that he was just really good at reading people, that he was able to, basically he would go one way or the other, and he was able to tell by the person's reactions, which way, if he was going in the right direction or the wrong direction. So he was basically playing hot and cold with the guys,
Signals,
sort
of body signals.
And he said it was impressive, but that was the closest he can come to figuring out how he did it. So even a really good magician can fool another magician. I mean, Randy made that point as well. Anybody can be fooled. Anybody.
Well, I
That's
mean,
the basis of Penn and Teller
Teller
shows,
have
yeah.
that show, and they
fool me."
every once in a while someone comes up with something and they can't sleuth it. And I'll tell you that Penn and Teller are very, very, very good magicians, and they
they are
know
industry.
the craft.
Oh,
They're
they know the
craftsmen.
industry like no one else.
Yeah. So I would think, if they can get stumped, it's all, so much of it
course.
is innovation and coming up with new ways to pull stuff off. I mean, there was one trick I saw. I wish I didn't find out how they did it, but it was this thing where there's like an animation on a card deck, and they flip through the card deck. It's like, one of those things where as you flip through each page, it's like a cell in an animation, and the person picks a card, and then the very last card, basically the animation of a stick man, and then he holds up the card that the person picked. And right? You know what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
Richard? You ever see this trick? It's really cool.
Yes.
It's a force. It's a version of a force. Yeah.
Play it in my head. Yeah.
No, it isn't a force, George. It
No?
isn't. No,
Oh.
they're prepared to show any card.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And that is the
cool.
tricky part, that they have to be very good at sleight of hand to get that
The correct
that last
corresponding.
card in there. Yeah.
Cool.
But it's very impressive, because you look at that trick and you're just like, how could they possibly have a flip book right there that can do that with the card that the person picked? So, they clearly aren't carrying 52 decks of cards. They were carrying a deck of cards and 52 cards.
Yeah.
They had to have that last card.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's take another question.
Okay, so this is maybe going back to topic of the day or the year. Last week they talked about the increase in average deaths and where those came from. But what about the common flu? What has happened to the annual stats for that? And is it possible COVID and the flu stats are being confounded?
So we talked about that too, actually. But what happened was the end of the spring flu season in North America, the Northern Hemisphere, ended about 4 weeks early or so, 3 to 5 weeks early. So the shutting down for COVID shut down the flu. And we're just getting into flu season now. The next flu season, this is when everybody should be getting their flu vaccine, but the flu hasn't really hit yet. So it's too early to say. But the thing is, it's very easy to test for the flu. You can get a test for the flu. But part of the reason why they're pushing for everyone to get the flu vaccine this year is because if you get the flu, it could look initially like COVID, and then you'll have to go into lockdown or whatever until they can test you and figure it out if it's the flu or if it's COVID. But it'll be sorted by testing. They are clinically different syndromes, but obviously there's a lot of overlap, and so they could be mistaken for each other. But so we'll see. How about, so you guys are like, you should be coming to the end of your flu season. So your flu season so far, Richard, has completely overlapped with COVID. So how's that going?
Yeah,
Do you know?
The flu season in here in Australia has been dramatic in so much as it's hardly been here at all.
Yeah.
The numbers are staggering of how few people this year have picked up the flu. Personally speaking, I haven't even had a sniffle since January, which is amazing. But the general population, because of all the measures we put in place, social distancing, masks, shutting things
washing.
off.
Yeah, the common cold is probably
The flus and the
less
colds
prevalent.
have suddenly gone, oh, we can't do anything.
It works.
It's been dramatic.
Yeah.
Wow. Let that be a lesson for humanity.
Yeah.
Right? Wash the hands and
stay away from everyone.
Sneeze in your sleeve. Yeah, stay away. Just
nobody touch each other ever again.
Any other questions, Ian?
Yeah, this comes from Discord again. They're saying that apparently there's widespread talk about COVID deadliness going down as of late. Is there any kind of validity to this claim?
Mm-hmm.
Is the virus less deadly now by mutation or some other means? Or is it just that the general treatment is getting better?
I talk about that on the show that's coming out tomorrow. Right? I didn't talk about that last week. Did I, guys? It's either last week or this week. So if you heard last week's show, either listen to last week's show or it's on the show that's coming out tomorrow. I haven't edited it yet, but I do a complete deep dive on that question. I also wrote a blog post about it on Neurologica. So there's multiple things going on. It's not the one thing it is not though. It's not the virus mutating. The coronaviruses mutate very slowly, and so far there have been no new strains appearing. The pre-existing strains have been coming and going, and then some of the, actually, if anything, some of the harsher strains are starting to prevail. But the virus is not getting milder throughout the pandemic. It is a host of other things that's doing it. Partly treatment, partly a side effect of social distancing and mask wearing. And things like that.
So if regarding the mutations, do we have a good handle on that? In other words, we'll know very quickly when we start to see some sort of real mutation here.
Absolutely. We can trace where the COVID came from and where is it going and where you got it from based upon the strain that you have. You know, they were able to tell that COVID came into New York 300 separate times by tracking the strains.
Wow.
So absolutely, we have a complete handle on
yeah,
that.
but is the science in agreement, Steve? I mean, really?
Does science really even know? I don't think science.
That's right.
I don't think so.
Science.
I don't think so.
It's always changing its mind on things.
Right.
I had somebody arguing with me that Trump is not anti-science and an anti-intellectual.
Stop. All right, next question.
Next.
What was one lesson that
Horse
Randy taught you
dead.
about skepticism, yourself or life in general, that you will always remember?
Humility.
Yeah, everyone can be fooled.
Everyone can be fooled.
Everybody.
Everyone can be fooled.
You can be fooled.
And will be fooled.
I've been fooled.
Yes, that's probably the chief thing. Humility above all, and that we all can be fooled. Absolutely.
Smart people get fooled. Dumb people
Yes.
get
Gosh.
He
Boy,
actually made a good case that smarter people are easier to fool because I think he drove that lesson home for me because he said, first of all, as a magician, the hardest crowd are kids because they don't make
What's in the box? What's in the box?
Yeah. They just don't.
What's that?
Wait, the way you fool people is by being able to predict how they're going to react to things, and it's harder to predict with kids. And smart people are easy to fool because they think they're smart, right? That makes them because
it's the lasers on the belt thing that Richard
lasers
said.
on the belt
it's the laser on the belt thing. They overcomplicate it. They overthink it. They can't. They would never think that something so simple would fool them. But
Project
also,
Alpha.
they lack the humility.
Yeah.
Right. Again, there's a lack of humility. If you think you're an expert, you are vulnerable. That's why scientists are the easiest people to fool if you're a magician. and that's why that was the whole point of the Alpha Project. Was
Remember, he went to
we're going to fool scientists, you know.
He went to Sandy Laboratories and then put the matchbox on his hand and made it stand up. And they did a spectral analysis of the box and they ran it through the gigascope and the micro lala and the whatever. They couldn't figure it out.
So we're having Banachek on the show this Wednesday because he wants to, we're going to talk to him about Randy.
Oh my God!
And catch up with him.
That's got to be a movie. Someone has to make the Project Alpha movie because it's such a Adam McKay style film. Because just to have these two guys looking at each other like, I can't believe we're pulling this off, and they're just totally
do it, George. Let's write the script.
Wouldn't it be great? Oh my gosh! Yeah. I think the rights were bought, but I think someone's got to it'd be so funny.
You could play the head of the lab, George.
I'll play. Yeah, I'll just be the janitor in the back with the broom.
I've had the pleasure of watching kids in front of magicians quite a bit because I'm a father, and there is something really just unbelievably special about watching kids at a good magician show, because first, they love it. They intensely love it. They're so enraptured by it. There is something special there's a relationship between magic tricks and kids. And the other thing I love about the way kids react is they will go up and grab the magic trick.
Yeah.
They'll grab it. They'll try to physically manhandle it. And the magicians,
that's true. Yes.
And the magicians and it's fun to watch the magicians they've already figured out how to work the kids
to deal with
this
the
guy.
kids,
We had this magician. He's so good. We had him over for my son's birthday party, and I'm looking at this guy. I'm like, he should be a teacher, because he could with a wave of his hand control that group of kids so unbelievably, because he's a showman and he knows he's spent time figuring out how to control kids at parties, But the kids were on their feet every time a trick happened. They were like, "Oh my God!" They jump up and be all over this guy. I thought it was so funny. Go see a kids' magic show.
In my TED talk, I say that there's a special seat reserved in the halls of Valhalla for those that have done magic shows for children, because the kids are can be incredibly skeptical and just be like, "What? Why? What?" Yeah, it's true.
I tell you what. Thank you to Randy, and begrudging thank you to Geller in a way that for spoon bending, because every year, except for this year, of course, I do the Mystery Investigators show for schools where we do science and teach skepticism. And the show always starts off with spoon bending, and the kids just go nuts. They love it.
Yeah.
It's a fun trick. And again, I think, well, what a pity this fun, interesting, entertaining, silly trick was perverted so much by people like Uri Geller.
Yeah. And how much cooler is it that the way it actually works is the way it actually works? That you don't need it to be explained with some kind of psychic hoo-ha nonsense. It's actually way cooler when you understand, oh no, you're prepping the thing and this is what's happening and this is, chemically and metallurgically or whatever the word is, that, that's way more interesting because it's real.
Yes, there's some interesting physics in there.
Yeah.
And it reminds me of another thing Geller would say is, and they say, I've got acid on my fingers. Now look, can you see any acid
on my fingers? As if that wouldn't burn through your... Okay.
Oh, no, I can't see any acid. My God, you must be using psychic power.
I know, Richard. We're never going to get over it. We're never going to be okay with the lies and the cheating and all of that nonsense. Because it's actually painful to see people get fooled. I'm not talking about magicians. I'm talking about hucksters. I'm talking about people that take advantage of other people.
Malarkey.
Yeah. What sells the spoon trick? What sells the spoon trick though is when it go in that state in which which the bend is beginning to occur. It almost has this liquid sort of feel to it. And that is powerful. That's a powerful sight.
And that's the showmanship. When you can take that spoon that is just a hair away from breaking. And I saw Randy do it so many times where he just rubbed it just a little bit.
It is so subtle, and then
Jay, you have two gremlins in your office.
I am being beckoned.
Speaking of magic,
what are you guys doing?
That's a good trick.
Oh my God! Look, how did they get their hands on my Randy doll?
Hey! Where's my Randy doll? My Randy doll is somewhere.
You guys cannot play with that.
I should get that.
That's something that I'm going to.
No, Mama got
it. I know.
No, I wouldn't.
All right,
Jay, can you tell them that I'll be sending more must sticks soon? Okay.
Thank you, Richard. I throw them away happily every time.
That's for
Hand them out
punishment. It's
Jay,
for
hand them out
punishment.
for
Yeah.
Halloween. Yeah, you'll be the popular
When the kids
one.
misbehave, they get an evening of must sticks.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh!
No, I've had those two kids follow me around Jay's house begging for mustics. I promise you. It's happened.
All right. Well, I think this is a good time to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Richard, George, thanks for joining us.
By the
And-
way, in
Thanks,
about 40 minutes, I'm going to be on my YouTube channel doing episode 13 of 13 songs. I know the world is a mess, and we've got this horrible news about Randy and all this kind of. So if you want to just get away for an hour and 10 minutes, come listen to me play a bunch of songs. The theme tonight is yacht rock. It's just chill
Yacht
music,
rock.
yacht rock.
Yacht
It's going to
rock.
be Doobie Brothers and some Michael McDonald and 13 songs. So that's going to be at 7
Awesome.
o'clock. It's 40 minutes from now. Come on over to my YouTube channel and we can all just hang out
And what's that URL?
it just put George Hrob into YouTube and it'll my channel will pop right up.
I think
and
it's
you'll see
Geologic
episode 13.
Records, isn't it?
It's you can do either one. Yeah, you can do,
Okay.
luckily my name is unique enough. But yeah, Geologic Records is the actual YouTube channel. But come in, the chat's always a load of fun. You can leave all kind of comments and be silly and just forget about the world for 90 minutes or so. So
And tomorrow
Sounds good
night,
to me.
6 p.m., Jay, Bob, and I will be doing an AQ6 panel for the what's the name of
Outpost
the conf-
conference. It's
Outpost
outpostcon.com.
Going to be
Awesome.
talking about sci-fi technology that will happen and that definitely will not happen.
That's right.
10 years.
George
All right,
and
now-
Richard, before you
Sorry.
guys go,
Yeah.
Richard,
Wait,
you
Richard
guys-
was going to plug something, Jay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Plug.
Oh yeah.
Hey, why not? First thing is this weekend is Skepticon 2020, the Australian
right.
Skeptics National Convention. SGU were at our last one. This is online. It's skepticon.org.au. There's a big weekend of international speakers, including my personal tribute to Randy, which I recorded just the other day. And if you haven't heard, I do a show called the Skeptic Zone podcast, and that's been going for 12 years now. That's right.
Love it.
So, but I must thank you guys for this wonderful opportunity to talk about, at the end of the day, to talk about our old friend,
Yeah, our
Yes.
friend.
Friend forever.
our friend.
So, George and Richard, I love you both.
Love you as well.
Very, very happy to have you in my life. I'm very
Cheers,
lucky to
guys.
have you in my life.
Thanks.
I
All
hate
around.
all
Thanks,
of you.
thanks to Randy. Thanks to Randy for making it possible.
Here, here.
Thank you, Randy.
All right.
Thank you,
the rest
Randy.
of
We will
that.
miss you.
Love you, Randy.
Good night, everybody.
Skeptic's Guide to the Universe is produced by SGU Productions, dedicated to promoting science and critical thinking. For more information, visit us at theskepticsguide.org. Send your questions to Skeptics Guide and consider becoming a patron and becoming part of the SGU community. Our listeners and supporters are what make SGU possible.